I get sent stories all the time about demon possessions, about haunted houses, about just brain scratches and jinns and that kind of stuff. But the other day I got sent a story, and this story is one of the most scariest stories I've ever come across. And I just want you to imagine being in that situation that this person was in that story. Now, if you're new to my channel, I say stories like in a first person format, like it's happening to me. And I'm so glad that this story did not happen to me. And in this video, I want to go through that story. So without any further ado, I'm just going to get straight into it. I was excited. I was so excited that finally I was going to have my own room. Growing up, it was me, my mom, my dad, and my younger sister Sarah. But finally, my dad got his own home. And that meant for me, I was going to have my own room. I remember the day that me and my dad went to the estate agents and got the keys to the house. As we were going back home, my dad said, "Do you want to go quickly see it?" I was like, yes, yes. And I was like to my dad, "Oh, I'm going to call dibs on the room that I want." I've always wanted a room that was facing the garden. I didn't care how big or how small it was, but I wanted a room that faces the garden. And I hadn't seen that house up until that time. So for me, I was so excited to go and see it. So me and my dad went to the house. I remember parking up outside of the house and running out the car and going to the door. Now my dad, he parked up and he got out the car and he walked towards the door. I was already there, just waiting for him to turn the key, and he said, "I can be the first person in." So he gave me the key in my hand and I put the key in the lock and I turned it. And as I turned it, I pushed open the door and I ran inside the house. The first thing I wanted to do was check out the rooms. I ran upstairs, door was shut, so I ran up to the door and I opened it. As I opened it, it's just like a massive light just came into my eyes. The windows had no curtains, there was no furniture in the room was completely unfurnished. Stepped inside and I looked around the room, just thinking where I'm going to put my TV, where I'm going to put my bed. I ran up to the window and I looked through the window and I can see this beautiful, massive garden. I was so happy. At that time, that moment in my life, I was so happy. As I turned around, I just started looking around the room, just scanning the whole room from every brick and every inch, just one side to the other. As I did so, I noticed a bedsheet on the floor. And this bedsheet was covering something. I wasn't quite sure what it was. It's a bit out of the blue, out of the ordinary. I wasn't expecting to see that. So I walked up to it and curiosity drove me crazy. So I wanted to see what was underneath. So I got the bedsheet, I picked it up with my hand and I pulled it. And as I pulled it, I was a bit confused about what I saw. It was a statue, a white statue. And this statue was of a woman. Well, the top half of the body was a woman and the bottom half seemed like maybe a sheep or a goat or something. And it must have been the size of a basketball, so not too big. But it had like red glowing eyes. I remember seeing it and getting weirded out. So I just put the bedsheet over it. I picked it up, I took it downstairs and I left it on the kitchen counter. Didn't think much of it. Me and my dad, we carried on exploring the house. And I told my dad I wanted that room and he was like, "That's fine." So 2 weeks later, it was moving day. And I was so excited. I spent the last 2 weeks just figuring out what I'm going to get, where I'm going to put it, how my room's going to be. I was imagining it all. And we came in, me, my family, we spent the next 2 weeks after that painting and decorating, and I got the room exactly how I wanted it. I remember doing all the furniture shopping in the house, helping my mom and dad with painting. You name it, we did it. As a family, it was the most happiest that we were together. About 2 months after moving in the house, that's when it all started. I was sitting down watching TV one day. It was just me and my mum at home. So there's me sitting on the sofa in the living room watching Malcolm in the Middle. next to me I had a little table, and in the table I had my glass of water, and I was just intently watching. And in my peripheral vision, as I'm watching Malcolm in the Middle, I see the glass edge a little bit. I turn and look at it, and I can see it moving, but it's so faint, so slight, that I'm not sure if my mind is playing tricks or not. So I'm just looking at the glass thinking, is it moving? Or am I just imagining it? And then slowly it starts moving a bit more and a bit more, to the point where it just slid across the table. I just saw a glass move by itself. I just called out for my mum. I was like, Mum, Mum. She comes running in the room and she's like, what's going on? I just said to her, the glass moved by itself. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I just saw the glass move by itself. She goes, it can't be. She's trying to offer me rational explanation, saying that, oh, maybe the table's wet. So I got my hand, I got my finger, and I put it across the table, and it was dry as a bone. I go to my mum, the table's not wet. My mum, she said to me, oh, it's probably your imagination. Gave me rational explanations, as I said. I knew what I saw, and it definitely moved by itself. I felt dread come across me. Like, at that moment, I just felt an unease. Like, I knew what I had saw, but my parents, well, my mum at the time, she just brushed it off and gave me an explanation that didn't make any sense. But she didn't see it. So as time went on, I kind of forgot about it. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into 6 months. And around 6 months into moving into the house, I was in bed one night around 1 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep. I knew I had to be up early, and the more I tried to sleep, the more I felt awake. I kept tossing and turning, and it's not usually like me to do that. Normally I'm the kind of person that, would hit the bed and go to sleep straight away. Or once I'm asleep, nothing's waking me up, not 100 alarm clocks. I remember I used to set like 10 different alarms and snooze since like 5 in the morning, all the way up until the time I had to wake up, just so I can gradually wake up. And that night, every time I tossed from left to right, I remember seeing the faint glow of my alarm clock, like this reddy glow. So I'd say 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m., 3 a.m. Every single time I toss and turn, my eyes would slightly open and I'd see the time. One time, around 3 o'clock in the morning, I tossed and turned, and as I turned, I looked at the clock. But as I looked at the clock in my peripheral vision again, I can see something in the room. Now, my room was quite big. It wasn't small. But this thing was at the foot of my bed. Immediately, as I kind of opened my eyes fully, I can see something in the room. And this thing was dark. It was black. It was darker than anything else around the room. It was darker than darkness itself. There was no lights reflecting off this thing or anything like that. And the body shape of this thing was not my mum or my dad or my sister. It was definitely none of their body shapes. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it. I wasn't sure if it's something there. And as the lights in the room adjusted to my eyes, I can see that it was definitely something there. And then I can see a red glow on the face. I'm thinking it's the alarm clock, but it's not, because the red glow is just on the eyes of this thing. The rest of the body is black. But again, my eyes are adjusting even more as time is going on, and I can start seeing details of this figure. One side of his face was completely burnt, and I mean burnt to a crisp. I could see clothing on this figure, and the clothing is so burnt as well that it's fused with the burntness of the skin. There's no hair, it's bald scalp. Looked like almost like Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. But the other side of the face and body was not burnt. The other side of the face and body had clothes. I could see the hands. I can see the face. I can see the hair. The hair was a long black hair. The skin was olive skin complexion. It was a woman. And do you know what? It was a beautiful woman from one side of the face. She was staring at me. I couldn't move my hands, my legs. I couldn't talk or scream. And as much as I wanted to move, I couldn't. And at first I didn't want to scream, but as I saw the burnt part of the body, I wanted to scream. I was trying to scream as loud as I can, but I couldn't hear anything coming out of my mouth. But she started talking. And that's when I knew that there was definitely something in the room, and I'm not imagining it. She started talking, but it wasn't in English or any other language that I knew. It was a murmur. It was gibberish almost, the way she was talking. I didn't understand a word of it, but she spoke in a soft, calm voice, relaxing almost. And as she spoke, I finally managed to get enough strength in my hand from being frozen that I was able to move it. And as soon as I did, I kind of snapped back into reality, and I got the duvet and I made sure I covered myself and every single inch of me. I was under the duvets, and as I got under it and I snapped out of this trance almost that I was in, I screamed. I screamed so loud that my mum and dad came running into the room. 2 seconds later, they flicked on the lights. They saw me crying hysterically, and as they took the blankets off of me, they just saw me and they were like, something's wrong. They were like, what is it, son? What is it? Tell us. What happened? What happened? Did you get a nightmare? And I explained to them what I saw in the room. When they came in, there was nothing in the room. Just me crying under the duvet. I was 17 years old at the time. I found it very embarrassing to be in that situation, but at that time I did not care. And over the next few weeks after that, every single time I slept in that room, I'd stay awake. I'd sleep through the day. I'd sleep in college. I'd sleep in classes. I'd sleep downstairs in the sofa when family was here, but I would not sleep at night. Every night I spent in that room, I spent with the lights on, or if I had a side light on, I'd be scanning the room all night, just looking left to right, left to right, left to right, until I got maybe like 2-3 minutes of sleep. It was starting to take its toll on me, and my parents decided that they were going to take me away and take me on holiday. It was the 6-week holidays at that time, so my dad said, let's go Kashmir and let's go visit your relatives there for the whole of the summer holidays. I was so happy and so relieved to be out of that house. When we went to Kashmir, now Kashmir, for those that don't know, is in Pakistan, and part of it is also in India, but I'm Pakistani and this is the part that I went to. And I remember seeing it and just the mountains and everything, just being like, wow, this is so different to the UK and so different to what I'm used to. And the courtyard was fairly big, and the fence that we just came through was the perimeter of the village house. The house itself was beautiful. It wasn't too old or too new. It was probably built around 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I have a big family in Pakistan. I've got loads of aunties and uncles and cousins, brothers and sisters, nephews and nieces. And everyone was so happy and excited to see me and my family. One night, my cousin and me were the only people in the village house. Everyone else had gone to see a family member that was unwell. So it was just me and him. And again, I was sitting in the living room watching TV. And then all of a sudden, my cousin comes running into the room. He comes running and darting in and saying, you have to come and see this, you have to come and see this. So immediately, I just got up and just followed him. He started running, and then I started running. I'm like, wait, what am I seeing? What have you seen? He goes, you need to just come and see this, you need to come see this. So I'm following him. I'm not even sure what I'm seeing, but as I'm running and following behind him, I get this sense of dread just come over me, and I don't know why. It was about 9 p.m. in the evening, and it was pretty dark outside. The only thing that was lighting the surrounding courtyard was the light from inside the house. As we approached the courtyard, my cousin, he opened the door that led directly to the courtyard, and as he opened the door, the light from inside the house, I remember, just lit up the courtyard. He goes, look over there. And about 20 feet away from the door that we were at, there was a shadow of a person. And as I looked closely, I realized that was an actual person. Not a shadow, not some flickering silhouette. It was an actual person. But this person was a woman, and the woman was sitting in a weird position on the floor. She was sitting in the weird position on the floor. She had jet black hair and she had one eye open, and that eye was huge. She had pale skin and she was just staring at us. Just middle of the courtyard, just sitting there, just staring at us. It was no one from the village, none of my family, cousins, members. It was not anyone that we knew. As I looked closely, I could see that one half of the face was burnt. And then as soon as I saw that, honest to God, I was just shitting myself. And I shut the door and I ran. I ran back into the living room where the lights were on, and I just sat there. My cousin brother Tan, he didn't know about the incidents that happened in London. So when I explained what happened in London and I explained what we just saw, he put two and two together. It was weird though, because when my family members arrived, Tan didn't really talk about it anymore. Like he didn't. We agreed that we're not going to tell everyone, but I'm going to tell my parents. But I spoke to my parents and I told them what happened. But when they asked Tan, he was just saying that, yeah, it could have been this, it could have been that. He was trying to rationalize it as well. Again, like nobody in my family had seen anything. It was just me, and I'm seeing stuff here now, and I felt like nobody was believing me. So anyways, that was the only incident that happened in Kashmir. But when I came back to London, when I came back to Romford, there was one other night when I was trying to sleep, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw a shadow figure again, and I got that same sense of feeling that I had when I saw the witch. But this time she wasn't there. It was exactly the same scenario. It was one shadow figure, and then I saw a group of shadow figures appeared in the room. They were all standing still, just closer to me, some of them, and some of them were further away. They were all scattered across the room, but they were all staring at me. And I remember just staring back at them, unable to move, unable to scream or make noise or any sort. And all of a sudden, they just started dancing. And that freaked me out. They just started dancing around the room, in and out the walls. They were dancing like a macabre dance. And then all of a sudden, they just disappeared. And for many years after that, I didn't have any other experiences. The only other experience that I had was the last experience that I had in that house. And that was when I went to go visit my sister and my parents. So this was in 2021. By then I had moved out, and I came to watch the UFC fight with my dad. And me and my dad, we love UFC. So every time there would be a match on, and usually it would be on quite late at night, I'd come around and we'd watch the UFC together. That particular night I came down, and I remember as I came into the house, I could see, so as you come into the house, on the right hand side is the kitchen, but there's like a frosted glass that covers the kitchen door, which is on the kitchen door, and you can see through that frosted glass like sort of silhouettes and figures and stuff like that of people that are inside the kitchen. I can see my dad inside the kitchen, and he's by the sink through the glass as I'm walking in. And I can hear him humming his favorite Indian song. And as he's humming, like, I'm just thinking, oh, my dad, he loves singing. So I roll my eyes up and then I open the door to the kitchen. But as I open the door, there's nobody in the room. There's no one there. My dad's not there. The humming stops. I step inside the kitchen. I'm looking around. I'm just thinking, what the hell? Like, where's my dad? Like, I just heard him. I just saw him. And as I'm doing that, I call up, Dad, Dad. And he's like, yeah. But he's saying yeah, and I can hear him, but he's not downstairs. He's upstairs. I'm like, Dad. And then I can hear him coming down the steps. And then as I turn around, he's right behind me. He's like, yeah, what's up? I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I'm sitting there with my dad a couple of minutes later, or about 30 minutes later, I'm sitting there with my dad. We're ready to watch the UFC. And then I thought, do you know what? Should I mention it to my dad or not? Because I felt the sense that nobody believed me about what was happening in the house or what was happening to me. So my sister comes downstairs, my sister Sarah, who's about 4 years younger than me. She comes downstairs and she sits down on the sofa. She's about to watch UFC as well with us. But I can't hold it in anymore. I need to tell my family about what just happened, because it just happened. It's the only thing I can think about, and it's something that I want to get out of my chest. So I start mentioning what it just happened to me. I remember my sister and my dad just looking at me and thinking, what? Really? But then my sister, she starts looking at me in a weird way. She then told me that she started seeing this figure in her room almost straight away. And this figure was a woman, and she had no skin on one side of her face. It was exactly the same figure that I saw. And then I said to her one night, I saw it too. And I've only seen that figure once. And I came in the room and I explained my story to her. And then I said that she started reading in a weird way. And then I started screaming and my parents came in. She goes, I know. I was awake that night. I was awake that night because before it came to your room, it came into my room. It came into my room and I started reading and it went. And then about 20 minutes later, I started reading again, and about 2 minutes after that, you started screaming. And what I said to her was, what were you reading? And she was reading, and she goes to me that she was reading like Ayatul Kursi and reading the Quran and all the verses and stuff that she knew. And my sister goes that the weird thing is, every time I used to read it, that used to repeat it backwards. So when I started reading Ayatul Kursi, she used to repeat what I was saying, but she used to say it in reverse, almost like she was mocking Islam. And that's when I put it together, and I was like, hang on a minute. When it came into my room and it started reading, started talking gibberish, must have been you reading in your room and that repeating it backwards.